Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Groovy podcast. My name is Ken Cousin. I'm screencasting, I guess, from Marlborough, Connecticut, and I'm joined by one of you. Like to go first?
Shimon, you go.
Wait a minute. Everybody, I forgot to hit the record button.
All right.
Now I can do record to the cloud, by the way. Should I do record to the cloud or not?
No, it's better you have local recording.
Okay. I'll record to this computer. Okay.
Yeah.
So for everybody watching, here we do this again. Ready? I hit record to this computer. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Groovy podcast. In case you're hearing me again, now we're recording it. And my name is Ken Cousin, podcasting from Marlborough, Connecticut, and I'm joined by
Szymon Stemplak, podcasting from Torun, Poland, and
Baruch Sadogurski, podcasting from sunny, not dusty, and not ashy California.
Ah, good for you.
Yeah, it cleaned up a little bit. Yeah, it's better.
Your air quality got better. How about that?
Yeah.
Very good. So, how are you, Shimon? How are things where you are?
I would say things are getting back to normal slowly, pandemic-wise. So I'm not the best source of information in this topic, but from my own experience, things are getting better slowly, but into the right direction. How about you?
Well, here, as United States go, we're doing well. Okay, that's not a high bar, as you're probably aware. I mean, we're handling this very poorly, but at least in Connecticut, things are reasonably solid, and I'd say all of my work at this point is online anyway, so I'm still basically sheltering, although not completely isolated. It's weird getting those Google travel, what do they say, that location histories?
Yeah. Like no new places this month.
Actually, I always wind up with like 3 or 4, and one of them is the local grocery store, and one of them is a Starbucks a town over, So It's just but it's quite a change from what it used to be like, definitely.
Absolutely.
So it's really good to see Shimon, right? Is that close enough?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I'm trying to find the actual YouTube link.
We just tweeted it, both Shimon and I. So
yeah, I mean, I see
if you
that we
follow
are
us on Twitter.
broadcasting.
If you were following us on Twitter, you'd know.
Well, I'm trying. Let me look under. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay, so if I go there, I want to mute it, and then I can see everybody else typing something.
Yeah, we have four concurrent users.
Does that include the 3 of us?
We have Shimon in the comments. It's like the real thing.
Okay, very good. Anything else before we dive into the actual show notes this time?
Yeah, I need to unfortunately leave early. So just if I disappear without saying goodbye, sorry about that. And you will do fine without me. One can claim even better, but that won't be me.
Well, one could claim, but what is your what conferences were you speaking? What's going on today anyway?
Yeah, so we do tons of stuff. It's all over. I mean, we obviously all the online thing sucks, and we really miss in-person conferences, and it's not the same. The engagement is not the same, and right. I hate it. But on the bright side, we can actually do much more. And there are weeks that I do like 5 or 7 meetups and conferences in 1 week, something that only Venkat could do in person, but now everybody can be Venkat. So yeah, it's lots of meetups and conferences. Today, for example, I have to leave because I have a talk at CloudOps conference, going to talk about container registries and stuff. So yeah, it's a lot, much less fun. It's basically get all the what sucks in travel, and that's jet lag, because we speak at European conferences in the middle of the night and conferences in Asia in the middle of the night. So we get the jet lag without all the fun part of travel for conferences.
Fun part of travel, right? Yes.
And that's
So,
meeting you. So
so are you doing anything else these days? I mean, what else is going on at JFrog?
so that we hit the news yesterday or day before. I don't know if you noticed. So that's kind of a big deal for us. We filed the for IPO.
Oh, I missed
Uh,
that. Really?
yeah, yeah. So that's huge. I obviously cannot comment anything about that
Oh,
because I don't think orange or stripes suit me. But yeah, it's big and it's fun and it's well dried.
so can you at least say whether your compensation will be in the six figures or the seven?
I cannot. I
You
cannot.
cannot say that.
Mostly
Oh,
because I don't know.
and okay, and you didn't give us any insider information. I mean, we could have gotten in on this, right?
Right.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
because of that little, I mean, we're going to be incredibly wealthy, and wealthy people don't go to jail. You could have shared this information with us, right? No?
Oh,
Ah,
there is the S1 though. There is a ton of good information there, and there I saw a lot of good analysis about it on in the last couple of days on the web. So
ah.
if you are into reading S1 documents or financial analysis of S1 documents, there is plenty for you to have fun with.
That's not what I do in my spare time. How about you, Shimon? Do you read S1 documents for
Absolutely
IPOs
not.
For fun or profit.
or profit? Yes. Well, I would read it for profit, but not in this case. So, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Are you embargoed for a certain amount of time, or
Yeah, well, now I'm embargoed for life. It's now inside trading and everything, so I cannot comment on any financial stuff for the rest of it. But for other stuff, yeah, it's mostly not embargoed. It's just I personally don't know.
but
It's like
lunch will
there is
be
a lot
on?
of stuff going on with whoever needs to do that, and that's not me.
But if we ever get together, lunch is on you.
Lunch is on me. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean,
That's for
it
sure.
was, probably was going to be anyway, but now, I mean, you're going to be
Now
fabulously
yeah.
wealthy.
Now I won't feel bad about it as well.
Is the filing in the U.S.?
Yes, and Nasdaq.
Interesting. Okay, because it's still Israeli based, right? Or do you have
Uh,
offices all
it
over the world?
officially again by the S1, it's like two headquarters,
Ah,
Sunnyvale
okay.
and Tel Aviv. I don't know what is like the exact structure.
Well, it looks like you are, you know, podcasting from a very pink room with a flamingo and everything. So I assume that it's something to do with JFrog.
Right? Okay. Yeah, I hear you. And a note taken. Let me fix that real quick. Here you go. You work. Yes.
Ah, green, much better, much better.
And Bening Bala, one of our live viewers, says congrats, JFrog. So
Thank you.
Oh, I see that now. Yeah, very good. I realized I can actually say something and it'll show up as Groovy Podcast, right? Like
Yes. Yes.
this
that's
Actually,
is
correct.
the
both of us, since we
official
both logged into.
feed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
There
I
you
could
go.
actually say, so, you know, what should I should say something harassing to Baruch, right?
Yeah, we can do it in the same time.
I'll just say lunch is on Baruch. There you go. There we go. Oh, you are also typing in the same feed, so we can. Oh, okay. So we're really going to entertain all of our listeners here for as long as you're able to stay on the feed.
Yeah. Now I think that will be now time for me to leave. I dropped the bomb of the interesting information that I had, and now
Yeah.
you enjoy the rest of the Groovy podcast with actually some groovy news.
Well, when your company enters the unicorn club, remember I'm a one person company, and it really wouldn't take that much for me to sell out. I mean,
Absolutely.
it'd be remarkably low in terms of absolute dollars. So keep that in mind when you start looking for acquisitions to make your company better. I can pretend to say all the right things too.
Oh, absolutely, you can, for sure.
Okay.
We're doing
Well,
this podcast for a very long time.
well, congratulations. You know, good luck to you. And clearly, we will have something to talk about in the future. Then,
Oh, for sure, for sure.
yeah.
And enjoy Groovy podcast. Thank you very much.
Have
Bye
fun
bye.
on your
And I
talk.
leave
Yes.
it
Thank
with
you, Baruch.
the
Have
two
fun.
with the two better hosts of the Groovy podcast.
There we go. Okay, Shimon. Now we can now talk about him. You know, that's if we like. We can talk about him in the behind his back now.
It's much more, entertaining when Baruch is online. So
That is a good point. Actually, it's
yeah,
much better when he's a part of it. All right. Well,
absolutely.
given that he's not here now, now we have to actually talk about Groovy and Grails and everything. So I see that we have our show notes now. Do you want to put a link to the show notes in the chat there or not?
Yeah, I think we can do it. Let
Yeah,
me.
the show notes are always on the GitHub repository called Groovy Dash Podcast under I think the organization is Groovy Dash Podcast, and then the repository is Groovy Podcast without a dash in it. Nice and simple. We are technically on season 4, episode 6, I think, which really, if you're just counting from the beginning, we are episode 80. So we're going to have to get our act together so we can crank out and make it to that magic 100 number, but not yet so far. So
Yeah,
at any rate,
but we need to speed up with the episodes because like I just
yeah,
counted
well,
that. I think it's
that's
second episode this year. So
well, that's now partly your job because you're prodding us to do it. I mean, it turns out that for those of us who do most of our work online anyway,
yeah,
my schedule's gotten harder to negotiate rather than easier over the
absolutely.
past few
Yeah.
months. So how are things where you are, by the way? Where are you? What are you doing these days?
These days, I focus entirely on creating content for my blog and YouTube channel. So
Mm,
this is my main focus. Actually, for the last 3 years, I was engaged with Upwork.com. I was working for Upwork, but starting from June 1st,
mm.
I actually focused entirely on blogging and creating videos. Just this crazy idea. I mean, who would give it a try during the COVID? Those uncertain times. But I said, hey, I mean, it's crazy, but let's give it a try. And things are moving slowly, I would say, but into the right direction. And if everything goes well, in a few weeks, I will announce some interesting project. Not only me, but also it will be something around Groovy community. So I think people will like it. So, but for now, I cannot say anything else than that. So yeah.
So you and Baruch are both full of secrets these days. I mean, I'm an
A
open
little
book
bit,
here.
yeah.
I do remember your announcement of going online like that. Be sure that in the show notes, be sure to add your YouTube channel. And I always list your blog, although I don't see it in there at the moment. That's the print stack trace one, right?
Yes, yes.
e.printstacktrace.com,
Dot
is it?
blog. Dot blog.
Oh, dot blog. Is that what it
Yeah.
is? Okay,
Yes.
well, people should be sure to check that out. I haven't watched all of your videos, but I've watched several of them. And your most recent one, I'm trying to remember what was the most recent one on? It was
5 common mistakes in Jenkins pipeline. That was the
right.
the most recent, but the I think something that will. I mean, this is Groovy related. Jenkins
Yeah.
pipelines are Groovy related, so I think people in our community may actually benefit from this video. But in July, I published 2 Micronaut related videos.
Hmm.
There is one in the show notes about creating Stack Overflow CLI application in Java. So this is something that is actually uh, quite interesting. It's not Groovy, it's Java, but it's Micronaut, it's Pico CLI, and it's Graal VM. So this technology stack that is really interesting for any Java developer and Groovy developer as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the show notes to see where you listed that. I'm not.
It's uh, It's the last item in blogs and
Oh,
other
there it
community
is.
news. Yes.
Right, and right, very good. I see that because I also saw. I mean, there's been a lot of activity in the Micronaut world
Yeah.
during the time since we made our last post. I mean, Micronaut has gone 2.0, 2.0,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yes.
of course, that there's the upgrade post in there on how to go from 1.0 to 2.0. But I've also seen uh, a fair number of posts about using Micronaut in general. Now, you've been working with Micronaut, is that right?
Yes. Yes. These days, mostly in the Micronaut CLI area. That's why I focused on exploring this topic, because I mean it was missing in the blogosphere, and especially in if it comes to video content, there was no like it's maybe not, it's not a deep dive kind of content, but it's like deep enough to give everyone a good understanding on how to start the CLI application, how to write it in Java, which is something that if you ask someone, I don't know, like 5 years ago, if using Java is something worth considering, people for CLI apps, people would say absolutely not. I mean, the start of the Java runtime environment takes about like a second or 2 seconds when your application does its job in, let's say, 20 milliseconds. It doesn't make sense to add this 1 second or 2 seconds just to start up the JVM or Java runtime environment. So, but these days with GraalVM, there is this problem is solved by just compiling your Java application to the standalone native executable file. So
Yeah, that particular video where you used Micronaut, and I guess you pronounce it Picocli. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce the library.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I call it the CLI, but I don't know if this is. We should ask Remco about how to pronounce it correctly.
of course. Yeah, but I did watch that video, and that was fascinating because it was one of those videos that was very detailed, so that if you do watch that, you really get the low level of exactly what you have to add and how you have to add it and make it work and everything. It looked like an enormous amount of work, by the way, to put all that together. Not the coding part. The coding part looked
Hmm.
actually pretty straightforward. The
Yeah.
producing the video looked like a lot of work. And
Yeah.
it really is a good one. I do remember retweeting that. And of course, your point about running Micronaut apps through GraalVM makes them the startup time becomes well, basically instant. It's very, very fast on that side of
Yes.
it.
Yeah, and
So that was
the great thing about Micronaut and is that, and basically tooling around GraalVM these days is that uh, compiling your Micronaut application to the native executable file is effortless. It's just everything is built in. I remember last year I was giving this talk, Groovy and GraalVM on GreatConf, where I shown, like a step-by-step how to create this native binary from some very simple Groovy script. And it was a lightning talk, 25 minutes, but during that time I showed every, like a possible error that may happen when you do it. And that was quite, let's say, complex to just compile a very simple script. But Micronaut makes it effortless. You just call native image, you just put your jar file on the class path, and that's it. You don't have to do anything else, because both Pico CLI generates those reflection files, and the same thing happens on the Micronaut side. So they provide you all those configuration files for you, so you don't have to worry about anything else. With my example in Groovy and GraalVM use case, you had to deal with reflections on your own. You had to configure everything on your own. You had to remember about every option that you have to set with the native image compiler. Micronaut does it for you, and that's absolutely beautiful thing.
I do remember seeing those slides. I didn't get to see the actual talk when you gave it. I didn't realize it was only a 5-minute lightning talk, but I do remember seeing the
25.
slides and looking like it was. I'm sorry.
25.
Oh,
25.
25 minutes. Okay. But I did browse through your slides and saw that it looked like it was a fairly complex operation because of all the dynamic parts of Groovy that you had to basically disable. And
Yeah.
then you say Micronaut took care of all of that for you. So that made life much, much simpler. I have only done a few things with the native image compiler with Graal, but of course I did it with a different language. See, I'm delaying the first mention of any other
Yes, of
language
course.
other than Groovy.
I appreciate that.
So, of course, there's bigger news out of the Micronaut world, which is also bigger
However,
news out of the Grails world.
one
Yeah.
last thing about that, and we can move forward. Things around GraalVM and Groovy changed dramatically when GraalVM released GraalVM 20.2 based on OpenJDK 11. And tomorrow I will publish a new video on that topic, which very quick showcase. And right now, creating native image for a Groovy script is much easier. But you have to wait until tomorrow to see it in the video.
If we just postponed our little podcast until tomorrow, we could have watched it, and we could have even had Baruch as part. No, it's probably for the best that we don't have Baruch involved. So, okay.
We can
so I'll be sure.
talk about it during the episode 81. I think this might be interesting.
Sometime in 2021, is that the idea? Yeah.
Well, I think we can do it in 2020. I hope.
Yeah, definitely. And okay, I'll be looking forward to that. Very interesting. I noticed there was a big change for me in in how I use Graal when they went from 20 or 19 to 20. I have not done much with the changes from 20 dot whatever, the dot changes since then. So interesting that they're making impactful changes even in the point changes on that.
Yeah, but the thing is, the significant change happened between OpenJDK 8 and OpenJDK 11, because GraalVM delivers those two variants. You can install GraalVM based on OpenJDK 8 and OpenJDK 11. And what I will show in this video, OpenJDK 8 still has issues I mentioned in the last episode. JDK 11 solved all these issues. So right now, the way to go with Groovy is to use OpenJDK 11, which is also, I think, a good thing to do anyway. So we don't have to stick to OpenJDK 8, and you can just move forward.
Well, this was, from what I understand from the Java people, this was supposed to be the year that everybody transitioned from 8 up to 11. Between the licensing changes and the availability of the open source variations and everything else, this was going to be the big one. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and everybody's plans got set back or changed or whatever. I have noticed, interestingly enough, I expect that the next surveys on the impact in the marketplace of JDK 11 versus 8, I expect a big jump in 11 for a very simple reason. Have you noticed, if you ever do anything with Spring Boot, the Spring Boot initializer now defaults to 11? And by doing that, I think automatically there'll be a big jump in usage. Now I'm just guessing. That seems anecdotal to me, but I still think that's why Spring Boot applications are so heavily Maven based rather than Gradle based, is because if you don't do anything, that's the default inside of Spring Boot. When you first access the initializer, it defaults to Maven. And I always switch it to Gradle, but I know a lot of people will just go with the defaults there. And therefore, I think there'll be a big jump in 11. Are you using 11 as your baseline these days?
Yes, I switched since the last episode.
I have switched also, but I have to acknowledge that, it's still a huge percentage of the marketplace that's still using 8. Now, of course, Groovy 3, when Groovy 3 came out, that took care of any issues with running on 11. Working with Groovy 3 on Java 11 is fine. And I've been doing that since then. And Gradle, I think once Gradle hit 6, they didn't have any problems anymore with Java 11. I don't remember exactly which version was the required one, but they're all the way up to, as you put in the show notes, there's 6.6 came out. And I remember, I think it was maybe yesterday or maybe this morning, I saw that SDK Man announced that 6.6.1 is now available, which I presume is just a small bug fix version around 6.6. By the way, do you normally upgrade your projects to use the latest wrapper, the Gradle wrapper, when they release a new version?
Not necessarily. I actually, my most projects that use Gradle are actually like ASCII Doctor projects
Oh.
for like building slides. And I remember I had with every major release, and I think that's also like a problem with ASCII Doctor, and there are like at least 3 ways how to compile your slides using ASCII Doctor, how to compile them using Reveal.js. And I remember whenever I have like one project which is still on Gradle too, because if I tried to upgrade it, it was just it didn't work. And in the other slides, I use different plugin and different approach.
Mm-hmm.
And there I have, I think, Gradle 4 or something like that. So
Or really?
yes.
You might want to
So
upgrade that one.
well, I don't compile those slides that often,
Oh,
so
okay.
it's just probably it's like one of the most recent, maybe not the very most recent version at the time when I create those slides, but it's let's say pretty recent.
Well, my habit is whenever I open a project that I've had around for a while, one of the first things I do is to upgrade the Gradle wrapper. I just delete the existing wrapper and regenerate just because in case anything changes. Now, I remember when there was the jump from 5 to 6, the biggest thing that changed for me was that now the plugins, especially the plugin for the build scan business, now that is in the settings.gradle file rather than the
Build
build.gradle
Gradle.
file. And that was a significant change for those few projects where I was actually using the build scan plugin. But other than that, I have also noticed, by the way, that when people use the projects that use the Gradle wrapper version 6, the download speed of the wrapper improved enormously starting
Mm-hmm.
around 6.0. I mean, if I have an older version of Gradle, a 4 or 5 version, and somebody has to download Gradle as the first time they run the wrapper, that actually takes a fair amount of time. But the 6.0 ones and above just go very, very quickly. I hope that's not just my own experience. I hope that's everyone's on
Mm-hmm.
that. Now, of course, we are, in fact, bearing the lead. There was a huge event that I don't see. Again, when I'm looking over to the left there, I'm just looking at the show notes in the
Mm-hmm.
different monitor. We don't have it in the show notes, but of course, the biggest thing that happened during the time we were not podcasting was Graham Roche himself, of course, is now
Mm-hmm.
a member of Oracle. I mean, he
Yeah.
left OCI and joined Oracle. I mean, that was one of those cases where I just about put out the bat signal and said, we need to do an emergency Groovy podcast on Graham
Yeah,
moving over to Oracle. Uh,
I
it's as
think
it
this
turned.
is. Mhm, go
Go
on,
ahead.
Ken.
No, you were going to say?
Yeah, I mean, you can watch, we have it in our show notes, this Micronaut 2.0 video from Madrid Groove user group.
Right.
And there was this presentation Graham gave about Micronaut 2.0, and there was this question there was the question about Micronaut Foundation, because this is also important thing that happened, which right now Micronaut will be, let's say, governed by Micronaut Foundation, not only by the OCI. OCI is one of the key figures in this foundation. However, there are just industry experts gathered in this foundation. Venkat Subramanian, just to name his name. And as Graham explained, he joined Oracle just to make this collaboration with GraalVM team and Micronaut much closer. So I think it's a strategic decision, and Graham is a role model if it comes to Groovy community, and he wouldn't. I don't believe he could abandon OCI and abandon Micronaut. He's still involved. He's as far as I remember, he is the founder of Micronaut Foundation, so he's still a father of Micronaut. So
Well, it's
uh,
clear he very much cares about the Groovy
yeah,
community, the Grails community, the Micronaut community. It's
absolutely.
clear he cares very much about the products, about Micronaut and Gradle. I'm sorry, Grails, pardon me. And I'm sure that he will be bringing his influence to Oracle in those areas. I did read the releases, the press releases, and the comments that were released for public consumption. I did send him a message, ask him if he wanted to be on the Groovy podcast to talk about it. I think what probably happened is that message I sent to him probably got buried in 20 million other messages he got right
Yes.
around the same time. I'm expecting. So we may have to try to contact him again and
Yeah.
see if, now that things have calmed down a little bit,
Mhm.
if he'd like to talk about it. But I did notice that he did give that Micronaut 2.0 talk. And of course, as you pointed out, shortly after he joined Oracle, Jeff Brown put up the announcement about the Micronaut Foundation that will exist as an independent
Yeah,
way to foster the growth and adoption of Micronaut in the
exactly.
community. Of course, even with all that, I think it's a this is a big event. I mean, this is a big deal to have Graham himself decide to join, of all companies, Oracle. I just did not see that coming at all.
No one
Um,
expected that,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So I mean, I'll simply say that at least on our podcast, we tend to think the best of people, especially in our own community. And we know, Graham is definitely, we've known him for years. His heart's in the right place and all that.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear not just why he decided to make the move, but also how things are how things are working out now that he's moved over. What impact is he seeing? I mean, we've seen several people join Oracle. I remember when Andres Almire, for example, wound up leaving and went to a couple different companies and then went back. So it's not that there isn't a home for people there that are productive. I've seen a
Yeah.
couple others mentioning it as well. But that was big news, and we should say something about it, I suppose, in the show notes. But it's hard to say something other than, hey, by the way, Graham went to Oracle.
Yeah, and we are missing details, so we can only speculate, and it
Yeah,
would
and this is
be
why we don't get any clicks, because we don't just
yeah.
randomly speculate. Do you want to start a rumor or anything, or not? You're okay with
That's
it
the
right now?
only that's the only rumor I know. So I don't know any other interesting rumors that would create any clicks on our podcast.
Well,
So
I wore the red shirt today, so I'm little willing to live dangerously, but unfortunately, I can't think of anything, really clever. Okay, let's see what else we have. Now, one thing I did want to point out, the post on Groovy dependencies and Spock 2.0. Have you played with Spock 2.0 yet?
yeah, I use it with my Micronaut CLI apps. Uh, no issues, works well. I don't see any problems. And Martin put this blog post just to explain the differences between Spock dependency wise between Spock 1.3 and 2.0. So if anyone wants to migrate their Spock tests, I think this is a blog post worth reading. Absolutely.
Well, since we have you here, I have to ask you how you would pronounce his last name. I mean, that's Polish as well as yours. So what would you say?
Polish pronunciation is Zajączkowski.
You'd put an N in it? It sounded like you put an N in it.
Yes, it's Zajączkowski.
Huh. I just see the Zajacz, and I would have gone Zayachowski. So it's wrong. So it's
Yeah,
Zayan.
because this this second A is our dialect A with this like with the tail under the A, which is pronounced on, and that's why you pronounce it Zajączkowski.
Thank you. See, I knew it was, I had to take advantage of you being here, for
Yes.
things like that. But it's definitely Marcin. I would have gotten that part right. So,
Yeah.
yes, for those who are not actively looking at the show notes right now, he wrote a blog post on Groovy dependencies and Spock 2.0. I've been playing around with the release candidates. I've been using Spock, and the thing the big difference about Spock that I've seen is that they are transitioning to using JUnit 5
Unit 5,
under the hood
yes.
rather than JUnit 4. And I'm glad to see that. I mean, I don't want to say it's
Yes.
about time because, it takes time for all these things to roll through, but I've been so pleased with the changes in JUnit 5 that I'm hoping that more and more projects will take advantage of that. And Spock, of course, is one of the dominant projects in the Groovy ecosystem. It's very good to see them leveraging that as well.
Yeah. One fun fact, maybe this will bring some people to the podcast about JUnit 5. I have this blog post about when you use, we mentioned it in the previous episode, JUnit tests not found if you use def keyword instead of void for a test method in JUnit 5.
Right.
And the funny thing is, I have I don't know, like every week about, I can tell you a few hundred, maybe not a few hundred, but something like 150 people searches for this JUnit tests not found. And according to bounce rate, which is like a 97%, it seems like because I'm ranked really high for JUnit tests not found in JUnit 5, and people are expecting something completely different. And when they came to my blog, they see, okay, it's like a Groovy thing, but they probably have completely different problems why their JUnit tests are not found, and not necessarily it's not necessarily because of Groovy. So it's like a fun fact today,
So the
second one.
idea, so the idea is if your return type is def rather than void, then the test may be missed. But if you change it to void, then they're found.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Because the thing is, JUnit 4 was much clever in this situation, and JUnit 4 gave you information that the test method, if you annotate your method with test annotation, has to return a void type, and there was like a very strict message about that. With JUnit 5, there is no message; it just silently says JUnit test is not found, and you have to dig into the class that runs those tests, and there is like in JUnit runner, there is information when it when it detects those methods, it checks, okay, if there is a test annotation and if the return type is void specifically. And
Interesting.
when people come from the Spock world, we use def when we define test methods, right? In
Occasionally.
Spock tests. And people do the same with JUnit 5. They use def and the test method name. And if you do it with Groovy that way, with JUnit 5, you will end up with this problem.
Very good. So I'm glad I remembered that. Speaking, so I'm looking forward to when they eventually go final on 2.0, but I have no idea what the schedule is for any of
Mhm.
that. So hopefully that will be relatively soon, or at least we'll hear more out of that
Mhm.
community over time. Now we have some other old friends of the Groovy community who've joined large companies. Of course, one of them was Guillaume Laforge.
Yes.
Guillaume joined Google a few years ago now. It's actually been a
Mhm.
while since he's there, and he's been doing a lot with the Google Cloud Functions. And we put in or you put into the show notes his blog post on deploying serverless functions in Groovy on the Java 11 runtime on Google
Yes.
Cloud Functions there.
Yes. And I strongly encourage anyone to take a look at this blog post because it just shows how simple it is to
Mm.
deploy a function written in Groovy or even in Java. Because, like in this case, what he's showing is just like a Groovy class. You have to extend some like this Google function, and that's it. So um, it doesn't matter if you use Groovy or Java, but what he explains in his blog post, you can take Groovy free. He is using Groovy free 0.3, if I remember well.
Mm-hmm.
And he's deploying this function from it's like a Maven project. You can run it through a Maven command, and then you can simply deploy it with Google Cloud Platform Client.
Well, it's good to see that he's still doing something Groovy related over at Google. Although I'm not sure. I mean, do you work with the cloud providers at all? Do you do much with those?
AWS mostly,
Yeah, yeah.
but
I would think so. And Azure seems to be doing very. I mean, Azure just. Again, it's not directly relative to Groovy, but Azure has their own version of Java, of course. That
Mhm.
actually Amazon has Corretto, right? That's their
Corretto, yeah,
implementation, and Corretto now has a Java 8 and a Java 11 version.
that's
And I
correct.
think that the Azure one also now has 8 and 11 as well.
Uh, if it comes to Azure functions, only at this moment, I think only Java 8 is supported,
Oh,
and this
really?
is something.
Ah,
Yeah, this is something that Graham was showing in this Micronaut 2.0 video. He
ah,
was one of the biggest, let's say, updates in Micronaut 2.0 is the serverless area of
right,
Micronaut, and
right.
they added support for AWS, for Google Cloud, for Azure, and Graham was showing this cool-looking Micronaut Launch website where you can set up bootstrap your Micronaut project, and if you choose the Micronaut serverless function project, and then if you add Azure library, and if you by default Micronaut launch selects Java 11, and then if you add this Azure library, it will just show you this error that Azure only supports Java 8. So you have to downgrade to Java 8 if you want to use Azure as your serverless provider.
Well, I have to say that's actually kind of impressive that they notify you about that. I mean, otherwise,
That's great. Yes,
yeah,
Otherwise, you would see it at runtime when you try to
yes,
deploy your function, and then you just lost, I don't know, like an hour or two, and then you start debugging problems. But Micronaut launch website actually tells you right away that you need to downgrade to Java 8.
very good,
But
very
both
good.
Cloud Platform and AWS, they support Java 11, if I remember
So it's
correctly.
still everybody's transitioning. It's just taking time. I thought Microsoft bought. Didn't they buy jQuery? I think it was that was maintaining some of the open or the adopt open JDK builds. Or am I remembering that wrong?
I haven't heard that.
Okay, well, I thought they
haven't
did a
heard
while
that.
ago. And of course, adopt open JDK.net. Did you see what's happening to them, by the way? Yeah,
No.
they're becoming a member of the Eclipse Foundation, interestingly enough. So the Adopt Open JDK, yeah, if you go to adoptopenjdk.net, they have a big link to the announcement. And the announcement says they're changing their name. So we're not going to be able to refer to Adopt Open JDK anymore. Did you see what the new name was?
I'm on their website, but I only
Yeah. I'm
see.
waiting for you. See the big banner link at the top, and then scroll down and you'll see the new name. Do you see it? I'll tell you, it's Eclipse Adoptium. Do you believe that? I mean, okay, I get it. I mean, they said it's a compound word for adopt open JDK and the Latin suffix "ium," and I'm like, I'm sure there are worse names out there, but it's hard to come up with one really quickly. I mean, okay, that's my own value judgment, but seriously, Eclipse Adoptium? I just okay, So at any rate, that I expect will have some impact on the community because a lot of people use adopt open JDK as their open JDK build.
But
Do you do
Ken,
that?
at least they won't get sued by Oracle for using Java or JDK. So
Well, I've noticed under SDK Man, because of course I'm a huge fan of SDK Man. I've noticed they still refer to adopt open JDK. They've not started switching the name over yet. So I don't think there've been any releases under the new name, the Eclipse Adoptium yet. But that'll be our clue as to okay, it's time to start referring to Adoptium. The question is, can I refer to it without laughing? And I'm not sure I can do that for a while yet. So it sounds like it sounds like an element that was discovered in a science fiction movie when they don't understand anything about physics and say, oh yeah, here's this new element, adoptium, that Tony Stark makes in a lab or something,
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you want to talk about next in the show notes?
Yeah, I would like to give a shout out to actually two people, Omar Bautista from Mexico, who recently started creating those videos on Groovy. I just, I found his channel accidentally. I think he posted something on Twitter using GroovyLang hashtag, and I watch this hashtag every day, and that way I found his videos. He records videos in Spanish, so I think for like the Spanish speaking people in Groovy community, this is something that might be quite interesting, and it looks like he covers like a very basic stuff about Groovy. So this is like an introductory videos on Groovy, but it's really good to see new people, putting their time and effort into creating Groovy-related content, and we are missing, like, those. I would call it like regional specific content. Like he creates Spanish content, and there is also this. I don't know if this is his name, Tiab, the guy who I also found on Twitter. He wrote blog posts about Groovy in Japanese. So people, if there are any Japanese speaking people in our community, they can go and read his blog, and there are like 5 blog posts about Groovy Free mostly. So he was covering some new features added to Groovy Free 0, which is, again, it's great. I mean, that's so, and I think those people absolutely deserve some kind of recognition and shout out. So they can keep doing those things, because it's great that we have more and more people putting their time and effort into creating content.
Well, and we know, of course, the community for Groovy and Grails and Micronaut and everything is very large in Spain. We definitely know about that. I mean, we've
Yes,
got,
yes, definitely.
Ivan Ilopmar, the, Twitter feed, Ivan Lopez. And we've got,
Yes. Sergio, Jorge, Alvaro Sanchez. Most people, most of them are
well,
OCI,
and
OCI related. Yeah.
also the person who always banters with us. Okay, you're going to make me say it. So S Delamo,
Sergio,
in
yes,
Twitter.
yes, Sergio Delamo.
Oh, you want to say that? Oh, Delamo. Oh, okay. So it's a
Yes.
pronunciation thing again. I was an American who puts the accent on the wrong syllable. Very typical. So we'll wait for him to. Well, this will be a test to find out if he listens to the podcast for real, and see if he heard himself mentioned, and if he wants to say anything back or now.
Sergio, if you're listening, even on the replay, let us know on Twitter that you are still with us until this moment.
Oh, well,
in
we
the
don't need to encourage him. He will come up with something clever to say.
Uh,
I'm not worried. But I'm glad that there are contributions in Spanish, because that's the other language I want to bring up. Is not any other programming language. I'll just bring up Spanish, right? As I,
yeah.
I'm trying to give him a bit of a hard time to see if anything happens. I don't know, but I'm glad about the Japanese one also. I think what I'll try to do is find out how Google Translate handles that. So I could take a look at some of those posts.
Yeah, I read it with Google Translate. They are absolutely fine.
Oh, wonderful,
So,
wonderful. So I'll definitely take a look at that. Now,
and
you
of
also
course,
mentioned. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, like content-wise, I think also our friend Dan Vega is worth
Yeah.
mentioning, because some time ago, it was like 2 months ago, I think, he
Mhm.
released this video on adding dynamic methods at runtime in Groovy to his YouTube channel, and it's always good to see Dan covering some Groovy-related topics.
It's always an interesting combination because Dan, I know mostly from his JavaScript work. He does a lot of stuff with, I think it's Vue,
Yes,
Vue.js that he spends a lot of
Vue.js.
time on. But
That's
he
correct.
has done a fair amount in the Groovy world as well, making instructional videos. And of course, the front end on his projects are always very good because he knows the JavaScript library so
Yeah,
much better than so many of us. So
yeah.
that's nice to see him working as well on that stuff.
But it's
Did
also
you?
worth mentioning about Dan. It's also worth mentioning that he has also the complete Apache Groovy developer course on Udemy,
Right.
and this is actually the most popular Groovy related course on that platform, and he has 2,500 students.
On which platform is that?
Udemy.com.
Oh, Udemy. Right. Udemy.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
He's got
and
2,500. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah. That's
yeah,
excellent.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I have videos on Safari on that, but mine are getting a bit dated, and it's good to see him to do the much more up to date stuff. And I think I'm trying to remember if he ported some of that over to Safari. There's so many online platforms now for video courses. There's LinkedIn Learning now. There's
Yeah,
Pluralsight, of course. There's the one I do so much on is Safari, and which now the O'Reilly Learning platform.
that's good.
Many of those going
He
on. So there's a plethora of resources available. Are you contributing videos on any of those yet?
not yet, no.
I will be very surprised if you are not contributing on those at some point. And if I know anybody, let me know. I mean, I can always introduce you if I know somebody. I can help you out on that. But
Sure.
I don't. I expect people will be coming to you on that.
Thank
Now,
you.
you also mentioned the blog post by, is it Noresha?
Yes, Naresha.
Yeah, and that person is That's coming. Looks like that's a person out of India, out of Bangalore specifically.
Yes, yes,
And you
he's
say,
from
yeah, he's
Bangalore
got several of
User
these
Group.
effective Java with Groovy type podcasts
Mm-hmm.
there, or blog posts, or both.
Blog post. Yeah, Naresha, he's always very active.
Mm,
But what's worth mentioning is, I think he started back in July. He started publishing on a regular basis some Groovy related blog posts.
mm-hmm.
Some of them are taken from he has this presentation he gave on during the Great Conf last year, like effective Java with Groovy, something like that,
Right, I remember that.
where where he was showing how you can adopt some like this effective Java tips into Groovy programming language. So it seems like he just sliced this content and he published those blog posts, which is great because people probably are willing to consume smaller blog posts in chunks. So it's great to see like every single week there is like a Groovy related blog posts.
Good. So you listed, looks like five of them in
Yeah.
of his most recent ones
Hmm.
in our show notes
Exactly.
there, which is great. So that, yeah, I'm glad that we're seeing,
Hmm.
especially when we get people who don't or aren't the same group of people always saying the same things in our community. That it's good to get some people
Hmm.
who are less well known in our community, maybe well known outside of it. I don't know, but people like like
Hmm.
Dan Vega, of course, is very well known outside our community. It's always good to see people who are contributing to Groovy to the ecosystem in general.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay,
And
we just have a couple more. Did you want to
maybe,
pick one?
yeah, I mean, like last community news, I think worth mentioning is also this blog post that was published on baeldung.com.
Oh,
This
that,
is one of
yeah.
the largest blogs, like a Java related, and also there are like a Kotlin related topics. I mentioned Kotlin, so my apologize.
No, that's
However,
some. It's a question. It's more the over under. It's like we're never sure who's involved in that, and they're always waiting to see at what time in the
Mhm.
Groovy podcast
Yeah,
the
but
Kotlin language is mentioned. And we made it
yeah,
almost a whole hour before that happened. So
yeah, but I thought you will be the person who
yeah,
mentions
but
it.
yeah, so nobody who had the people who bet the over are going to win, and the people who
Mhm.
picked that it would be you rather than me, well, good luck. I mean, that's the long shot,
Yeah,
came in this time. Anyway,
yeah.
yeah, that Beldung, however he pronounces it,
Mm.
that's one person who manages a group of people, from what I understand, and
Mm-hmm.
they are very focused on Spring. They have their own
Yes.
Spring course they push all the time. So anything that touches on the Spring world, they tend to have a lot of, and some of that tends to be Spring Boot and Groovy, of course.
Mm-hmm. And having Groovy on such a platform is beneficial to Groovy and the community because like thanks to this, probably some people heard about Groovy for the first time, and maybe they will just look at the programming language and see, let's give it a shot. Yeah.
Right. So he's got a bunch of them, but you picked one that was very recent that got brought up as
Yes, yes,
well.
that
I
was.
remember the first Spring Boot app that was publicly published by Pivotal at the time was written in Groovy. And the
Hmm.
reason they did that is because the entire app fit in a tweet. Remember, they were using the
Yes,
Spring
yeah.
Boot CLI, and they just put the controller in there as a one line,
Hmm.
basically one function. And of course,
Yeah.
Groovy made it very simple to do. I don't know how many of those actually made it into production, but it was
I can tell you,
amusing that
I made one,
yeah.
and that was very risky decision.
Right. I mean, I when I teach my spring classes, I also have an implementation of the same apps in Groovy and an implementation of
Mhm.
the same apps in some other language, namely Kotlin, of course, in there as well. And you see, I've been doing a lot, as you mentioned. You were kind enough to link to my blog post about solving that
Yeah.
daily jumble in all three languages. That's the one I usually use Kotlin for the Grawl feature of being able to do the
Mhm.
native compiler. right away on that. But of course, now that I realize that Micronaut has that capability in it, if I had been building a server-side app, then now I know I can stick with Micronaut on those
Hmm.
features. That'd be very helpful there.
Yeah, and
Uh,
if you want, you can use Kotlin with Micronaut as well. And I
oh yeah, I know. I mean, Micronaut supports all three. Now, I
hmm
don't know what impact that has in the community. You know what I mean? Whenever I talk about microservice frameworks, I'm always sure to bring up Micronaut, but usually the people bringing up microservice frameworks are Java people. Occasionally I'll get contacted by Kotlin people who want to talk about Ktor or whatever, and I say, well, do you know about Micronaut? You know, because you can write in that too, and you could just write regular Java and etc. So I don't know. I'd be interested in seeing at some point somebody from the Micronaut community giving us a sense of what percentage of Micronaut apps are written in the various languages. You know, how much interest are they seeing? Is there any
hmm
growth in each language? I think that would be fascinating. So hopefully
yeah.
we can talk to some people from that community and see what's going on
Mhm.
there.
I think it would be interesting, to see some kind of case study of someone who used, let's say, Kotlin production wise with Micronaut,
Well, I
and
imagine there's all three. You know, it's just a question of.
Mhm.
I mean, I would think I would use that information as a Micronaut person, if I was a Micronaut person, you know, if I was in that
Mhm.
community, to see where they needed a bit more marketing or where they needed
Yeah.
where there's a potential growth area. I mean, I'm not good at
Mhm.
marketing, but I
Yeah,
imagine
but
the OCI people are excellent. So,
Mhm. Yeah, but like with open source project, it's hard to get this data,
mm,
like who uses your framework with which programming language. I think
mm.
it's even like I don't know, information from statistics from a Maven repository. They won't tell you like you will get some number, but it doesn't mean anything, right?
Well,
So
maybe then it'd be the way to go would be to look for questions on Stack Overflow and see what when
maybe,
you're looking at
yeah.
Micronaut questions, what language are they asking about? Maybe
hmm
again, I'm not good at this, but I imagine there's some information there.
yeah.
Anything else you wanted to bring up in the list there?
Yes, ApacheCon and Groovy
Oh,
track moderated by Paul King. This is a
mm,
huge, actually. It takes place on September 29 to October 1st. And there is, I added a link to Apache Groovy track, which is Groovy specific. And
mm.
there are many interesting topics in that agenda. And what's also, of course, this is the online event and it's free. So anyone can attend, anyone can watch those presentations live during ApacheCon. So I would strongly encourage anyone to go and register to that event.
Yeah, I was going to try to get something in on that, and I realized that first I almost missed the deadline anyway, but secondly, it's just I have a lot of conflicts in that
Mm,
time frame. A lot of things seem to be going on during that time.
yeah,
I'll mention, as long as we're mentioning conventions at all, it's not exactly a con exactly, but the former GIDS, the Great International Developer Summit, the one that was used to be the Great India Developer Summit in Bangalore and then in Australia, they've all gone online this year, obviously, and they've got events happening basically one or two per month, and they've been going on since July, and they're going all the way to December. The Java related one, Java and related topics, is also in September. I'm giving a brief talk, I think, there on features in Groovy 3 inside of that. So I know they've got some Groovy information, not a lot, but a few
hmm
things there. I'm also, I should mention, I'm giving a talk at the London Groovy and Grails user group next week. Actually, I think that's September 1st. And again, it'll be about features that are new in Groovy 3. So I should
yeah.
probably send you, well, I'll send you a link or whatever. It's a
hmm
meetup group. And then on the 10th, I think it is, check
That's
the calendar
correct.
to be sure. I'm pretty sure on the
I
10th.
just checked your calendar.
Ah, okay. So
It's
on the
September 10th.
10th, I'm giving a talk at the Madrid
hmm
Groovy Grails user group. That's our friend Ivan Lopez as well. So that
Yes.
one I'll be talking about functional features in Java, Groovy, and Kotlin, and of course I will be sure to emphasize Groovy. This, by the way, that talk about Java, Groovy, and Kotlin is my subversive way of pushing Groovy back into a community that seems to forget that it exists. This way I could say, oh, well, you could do this functional stuff in Java, you can do this handful of things in Kotlin, but look how Groovy's already got a memoize annotation and tail recursion and trampolining and all this other stuff, and got a
Carrying.
curry methods. And so it again, it's partly a way to push Groovy into a community that's forgotten it's there. Do you have any upcoming events that you wanted to mention?
Nothing from my side, no.
Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything. Anything else you wanted to bring up from the show notes or anything? I'm just looking them over.
No, I can only encourage our listeners and the viewers to take a look at those show notes. There are links to every thing that we mentioned today. We didn't mention the Grails 4 upgrade notes by Eric.
Oh, right.
But if you upgrade your Grails, I heard that upgrading Grails 3 to Grails 4 is almost effortless, but I guess Eric found some corner cases and he put this blog post together. So if you are in this situation, go and check Eric's blog post.
And Eric really is an expert in everything Grails related, so it's wonderful to get information from him.
Yeah, Eric is a Grails rock star, and there was also we should hear about the new Grails star rock star in upcoming weeks or months. There was this period of time. I think it was up to August 19th. OCI was collecting nominations for the next Grails rockstar. So, yeah, we will see who's the next Grails rockstar.
And we'll have to bring that up certainly the next time we have a podcast. So hopefully we can get back on a more regular schedule, and we'll see what that regular schedule is. I want to thank you personally for prodding us to have this one. It's a good thing, especially because Baruch turned out to he kind of just blew us off. So, it's good that you were here. Yeah. Again, that's partly a test to see if Baruch actually listens to our podcast. We'll see how that goes. Exactly. And then I want to also thank anybody who was actually listening on the live stream there. Who was
Paco,
in there.
Benny Gambala, and we have 10 people watching right now.
Oh my goodness. Wow. What are we going to, all those people, I don't even know what to do. Anything else? So I think, is that everything, or do we want to wrap it up at this point?
I think we're done. We covered everything.
Okay. Again, those of you who can, please feel free to support both Groovy and SDK Man on the open collective approach there. And if you have any other pieces of news or information you'd like to send, feel free to let us know, or you can always send a pull request to the show notes if you like, and we'll be happy to incorporate it on our next session. So thank you very much for coming, and good luck, everybody, and we will see you all next time. Take care.
Thank you everyone. Take care.
Okay, I stopped the recording, and then how do we end the live stream? There's a button over here. I see a pause. I don't see a stop. Oh, end stream. Okay, so for all the people who are still listening on the live stream, we've stopped the recording, but now I'll hit the end stream button. You can see our production values are still pretty minimal. So
yeah, but we're growing. We're getting better.
Hopefully. Okay.